You see the paintings before you...
I met him outside the appraiser stores of the customs service where I was working then. He was with his wife-to-be, Lee Krasner, Leonore Krasner, I insist on calling. And he was the only time I ever saw Jackson wear a hat. And he looked like a businessman from Kansas City. Yeah. And a whole overcoat. It was wintertime. And Lee said to me, "This guy's a great painter. He will be," so forth. And I said, "Oh, okay." I liked what he did in 44. He ran into some kind of trouble in 45, 46.
After the mural, after the...
Yeah, well, a year or so. There was he was struggling. I was reaching for Picasso. And I wasn't the only one to notice that, though. It wasn't said until later. And then he did a couple of small pictures called Eyes in the Heat. They're like finger painting. They actually painted straight out of the tube. He put the nozzle of the tube right to the canvas, and I said, that's it.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'd always
said,
visit him, I like this, I don't like that, and so forth. And then in the summer of 47, it was, then the first spatter drip poured paintings came. But I thought he was a great painter before that.
And the one thing I wanted to quote to you and ask you about, because it seems close in language to things you said about him at the time, was the statement of purpose he did for the Guggenheim Award in 47. "I intend to paint large movable pictures which will function between the easel and the mural. I believe the easel picture to be a dying form, and the tendency of modern feeling is towards the wall picture or mural. I believe the time is not yet ripe for a full transition from easel to mural. The pictures I contemplate painting would constitute a halfway state and an attempt to point out the direction of the future without arriving there completely." Now,
he expressed himself damn well, you know?
It's lovely.
Hard-headed.
What do you think he means by the time being not yet ripe?
God, I have to talk about myself here. Damn it. I had been carrying on about the demise of the easel painting quite wrongly. So, someone said, I got the idea for him. No, it was the other. And after Pollock gave some interview about not wanting to do easel paintings, the Guggenheim statement wasn't quoted. I had to say to him, Pollock, never listen to what's written about you.
Yeah.
Because I'd written this piece in Partisan Review about the easel painting, and no beginning, middle, and ending. When he said to an interviewer that his pictures had no beginning, middle, and I said, "Oh, Jackson, can't you hear that? You're repeating what I said in Partisan Review. Don't you know better? I was wrong. Damn it. I was wrong." Oh, he got sheepish about it, that's all. And I said, I thought this was highfalutin intellectual journalism on my part. He objected to the pictures of a friend of his. I won't mention his name. He said they were just easel paintings. And I knew what he meant. They were still easel paintings, but just easel paintings. Well, Pollock's own pictures remained easel paintings to the end. Even the so-called, the long ones of friezes, which were very startling at the time. Now that other painters have done these long, narrow paintings. But at the time, and I remember calling them friezes, they were still easel paintings. And I was being one of those premature futurists, seeing crucial change or epochal change before it happened. The over-anticipation of the future.
Yes, but don't you think he saw that too? Or don't you think he had a very strong sense of his pictures as being, he calls them a halfway state and an attempt to point out the direction of the future?
Well, he knew better than I when he said that. And it is a fact that he wasn't painting murals. He knew that. And it is a fact that, on the other hand, we were objecting to cabinet pictures, as Herbert Reed called them. And that's the one felicitous thing that late Sir Herbert ever and there was a kind of a discontent with the cabinet picture, the tidy picture on an easel. And then in the next generation, that question seemed to get blown away.
Yes.
We saw someone like Morris Lewis painting, or Olitsky or Nolan. And the question of the easel picture, the tidy picture on an easel that was all in control, disappeared. Now, in the 19th century, the French had painted way better pictures than bigger pictures than the Americans did. Better is a nice slip. And it wasn't a question of size, because Courbet's studio, which is a great, great picture, is a contained picture. And there's something about getting away from that contained, boxed thing, which is one reason Pollock painted on unstretched canvas, and why he painted so big. From time to time, he wanted to find his way to the edges of the picture, rather than start out with those edges being given, as they would have been on a stretched canvas. Bonnard had anticipated about that. Bonnard painted on unstretched canvas.
Right.
And then would cut out
Yes, I mean, it seems as though there's two strands in that statement. I mean, the one, that strand that away from the containment and orderliness of the
not
order.
No. Good art is always orderly.
Yes. All right.
You find a new kind of order, that's all.
Yes. Neatness, perhaps.
It was what by then had become, especially since Cézanne. Cézanne had been more conscious of the shape of the format than anyone before. You know, repeating the shape of the picture, the shape of the canvas inside. And that had become, I mean, Cubism had driven that home.
Yeah.
And it was a breakout from synthetic Cubism, the contained picture, which until then had been, there was nothing wrong as such.
Yes.
But for Pollock and others, it became a confining notion. That kind of well-made picture, the well-madeness had to come from somewhere else.
You time and again say in the 40s, right, that it seems as though, I mean, the main course of modern art is not a course which is all about the kind of desperation and violence and, intense, morbid alienation, right, of modern experience. But these guys put art together in a kind of cooler, in some ways more ruthless, right, hedonistic way.
Apollinian.
Yes.
Apollinian, yeah.
Now, Pollock isn't Apollinian,
No,
is he?
he's not. He's Dionysian.
Yes. And don't you think that's a sort of serious tension between you and his art? It's not just you standing above his art and trying to take your distance. It's you confronting an art that you think you know is great. It's, you're trusting to your experience of it, and yet it's a problem for you that it's
the characterization of the art was the problem. Actually, time went by, I saw Pollock as being not so Dionysian, more Apollonian, and I think all great painting gets quiet in the end.
Yes.
Whether it's Rubens' oil sketch or Pollock's all over. It was the trouble was a damn characterization, and I went into kind of cultural journalism then, and I had to live and learn. And then I had to learn, and I had to say it again. You don't ask anything of art except that it be good. You don't prescribe. You don't make specific demands that art do this, art do that. When it's good, it does everything. What's looked through is the discipline. And the discipline has something to do with the difference between the good ones, the good paintings, and the bad ones.
Yes.
They chiseled off pictures of failure. On the other hand, one and Lavender Mist, great successes. Blue Poles is a failure, as Jackson himself recognized.
Didn't the technique often produce canvases that were rejected by Pollock himself as incoherence? I mean, did it
not because they were incoherent, because they failed. Incoherent isn't the word.
All right.
They failed, and well, again, I have to pat myself. We'd look at it together and agree.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
It was so pragmatic, to put it, so practical. It was so down to earth. A picture'd come off, and it wouldn't come off.
Yes.
Or another one wouldn't come off, and
Yes.
it was whether it came off or not, and nothing else.
Right.
And only your eye could tell you whether it came off. Nothing else could.
Yes.
As same is true with Goya or Pierre. Only your eye could tell you.
Of course, but I mean, this is leaving aside the fact that Pollock has pushed himself or been led right into an arena where the picture coming off or not, right, is dependent on a very strange, exacerbated, risky set of procedures.
No, that's melodrama.
Is it?
No, it was day in, day out, just like it was for an impressionist. Some days you were hot, some days you weren't, and there was no screwing yourself up or getting yourself into a state.
What's the procedure for then, do you think, looking
What
back?
procedure? Yeah, the procedure was a way of putting paint on.
Yes, but what do you think were its advantages for him? Why did he think that was the way to do it?
That because, like Hoffman, he had noticed that when you use your elbow, wrist, and shoulder, somehow your education as an artist tends to cut. And he found that when you drop paint on the surface, it would, somehow not cut. That wouldn't solve the whole question.
What does cut mean here?
Break the plane.
Break the plane.
That's that's why he look. Hoffman had done it first. Didn't follow up. Jackson found that this was the way he didn't have to worry about his wrist or his elbow or shoulder. The thing that gets you when you try to draw in abstract, in shallow depth.
Yes.
And it's as technical as that, and it was just down there, and so you didn't cut. And sometimes when he stopped using his spatter and poured into it, and he'd become so accomplished in the meantime. God, he could draw better from life after 10 years of abstract painting than he could before.
Yes.
So the black and white, okay, the black and white show was good, but he knew he couldn't take his brush, and do this. Yet use something else.
On the one hand, looking back at it, there are many of those, particularly of the drip paintings, right, which look marvelously open, lyrical, achieved. Apollonian, I suppose, in your sense.
Yeah.
Now, some others of the drip paintings don't look like that still, right? They look like an effort. They look like,
when they fail.
Do you think the one in Dusseldorf, for instance, the black and white one, fails?
Yeah, fails. Mm-hmm.
So you think that failure has to do, right, with the mark of effort and...
No. Nobody, no one, not Kant, not Schopenhauer, not Croce, has been able to say what makes a work of art succeed, what makes it fail. You stab, you grope.
Yeah.
You grope. And,
well, stab and grope in this case. I mean,
well,
what makes for failure in your view in those drip paintings?
When the things don't sit. And look, Pollock himself would worry about the things that didn't sit. And he'd go back into them. And sometimes he'd rescue the painting, sometimes he wouldn't. And Pollock was extraordinary as a human being. He lost his stuff in '52. And I remember going to the Carnegie National in Pittsburgh in '55, I think it was. And there was a '53 picture of his hanging next to Carl Henning Peterson, the Danish painter. And the Peterson was showing his picture up. And I saw Jackson, said, "How did it look?" And I said, "No, it wasn't there." And he nodded. And the picture the Guggenheim has, Out of the Deep, I think, was on to something, and he just missed. And he didn't resent my saying that his pictures hadn't been so hot since '52. They felt so isolated. Unless you lived through those days, you can't imagine how alone these people felt.
Yes.
The fact that the Museum of Modern Art had bought a Pollock didn't affect that one bit. The fact that he was taken up by Peggy Guggenheim, more credit to her, didn't seem to affect you. Until the mid-'50s, a little later, the isolation felt by those whom I consider the best artists of the time was, can you mitigate isolation? All right, it was unmitigated.
Yes.
And, no, that's changed. That's changed. The art boom took care of that.
Yes.
Now, famous artists are celebrities.
Right.
They wanted what we all want. Fame and money.
Yes.
And girls, too, I suppose,
Yeah.
according to Freud. So. Really? They boil down to that.
There's nothing wrong with wanting fame, girls, and money, right? I mean, it's what kind of fame, right? Fame with whom? Fame based on what kind of achievement?
One knew where fame was. Fame was in the magazines, the papers,
So you think they had straightforward art market ambitions, right? From start to finish?
Art market ambitions, that's a bad way of putting it. They wanted to live better.
Yes.
As any normal human being does.
Of course.
They weren't mercenary. They wouldn't do a thing just in order to sell. Good God, no. That was unthinkable. And, but it became a question of, you couldn't dissolve your own anxieties, your own aspirations, so forth, in larger ones. It was your own art.
Yeah.
It was your own writing. You wanted to score, and you hoped to make a better living. And by God, watching people like Pollock and Smith and others live in those days, I had a job. You know, I'd see. It was tough.
Yes.
It was damn tough. He got notorious without being famous, and he would sell one picture a year for a while.
Yeah.
And living on Osorio's advances. Thank goodness for Alfonso.
The kind of machinery of publicity, right, which already surrounded him to some extent at certain moments in his career, right? The name of the photographs, the double-page spread with, you know, Jack the Dripper in Life magazine. What's all that about? Is that a play for a place in the market, or
it wasn't Jackson's doing.
It wasn't.
It wasn't his doing. He didn't seek it. Good God, he was the last man on earth to push.
Well, he sat
lent
for the
himself
photographs.
to
He
it.
sat for the
Oh yes, well you were supposed to.
What
you
do
were
you mean,
supposed to. Well, this is the normal way of things. That if a magazine wanted to come around and make a fuss about you, you submitted.
The name of things are rather more elaborate than that, aren't they? I mean, that's lending yourself to a very highly contrived iconography.
Hans Nemeth was very much impressed by Pollock's art and by Pollock's personality.
Yeah.
And it was a more modest thing than you might imagine now. It wasn't with a big apparatus or anything. It was, they were making an avant-garde movie, as it were.
Yeah.
What got in the way was the fact that his fellow artists, all through the 50s, felt that he was a freak painter, that it wasn't, properly speaking, art, that the real painters were de Kooning and Klein, that what Pollock did was not real painting. It was some freakish thing.
Yeah.
Now, in the last year of his life, and it was only in the last year of his life, when he came in to see his analyst, Pollock frequented Cedar Street Tavern. He was aware of this, that he wasn't thought to be a painter, properly speaking. But his all over, poured, dripped, spattered manner was not real painting. It wasn't, I'd say, art school painting. And he was aware of that.
Yes.
He was aware of this feeling. And he was always drunk at Cedar Street Tavern. He'd carry on, and that was part of the reason he carried on.
So you think he was more of an outsider in the New York scene than we realize in retrospect?
Yeah, that's right. It's only in retrospect that they put him in the Cedar Street Tavern, which he only visited in the last year of his life. He was never in the Cedar Street Tavern, though. Then Pollock, at the very end of his life, said, I didn't take enough look at the Impressionists. The Impressionists had been out for 40 years. He said, I've got to go back and look at the Impressionists. That's what he said at the end of his life. Had he lived longer and stopped drinking, he would have recovered. No, because he wouldn't have lived without recovering. But damn, he had this romantic notion of an early death. You know, the people have that. And I loathe that sort of stuff, but he had that, and he was telling Lee where he wanted to be buried and so forth.
Yeah.
And all that. And he had a constitution is like a horse. There was nothing wrong with him. You know? There was nothing wrong with Pollock. With all his drinking, his liver was still there and everything was still there. And this shit about where he wanted to be buried, I'd hear him like that romantic crap. Yeah, you know, death is an overrated literary idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to think of yourself dying early. It sounds good, anyhow, but... So he was full of shit, like everybody else.